would you say y'all are prepared not to play this season? I know you want to, but would you say you're prepared not to play?
We've approved the strike authorization vote, which means that we're able to formally lock out whenever we want because we have majority of the players' votes behind us. I think that for me personally, like the closer it gets to WNBA season, we're prepared to do it, to not play, but we don't want to. We want to play because we know how important it is to be on the court for a number of reasons, for the people, for the fans, for the city. But it'll be something that's really tough if push comes to shove, because, you know, like you said, you're comparing apples to oranges. The W and the NBA, like, contracts are vastly different.
Very skewed, yeah.
So it's like, yeah, the top 10, maybe 15 players can survive without a W contract.
Right.
But the rest, it's like, no, you don't want to go that much without getting paid. I feel like the PA is doing a great job of making sure that we have like the amenities and the resources. And if we don't get what we want, we will sit out. But we don't want to do that.
Terrika Foster-Brasby, welcome to the WNBA on NBC. Last week when you were here with me, we were discussing a CBA meeting that was happening in New York, and we got some information from that meeting. And based on what we got, it doesn't seem like a lot happened. It doesn't seem like there was much progression. And so Breanna Stewart recently launched a podcast with Miles Turner. We heard them just speaking on it. And look, she said the PA is prepared to strike. They don't want to, but they're prepared. We know that the strike authorization had already been voted on. You know, we knew that already. So it's there in their back pocket should they need it, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I thought it was interesting. There was like a no comment, I believe, from NECA, or she said like she couldn't discuss the meeting immediately upon leaving.
Yeah.
Right. And then we heard more from her after the fact, and other members of the executive leadership. And, you know, NECA said they volunteered that they did not have a proposal, they as in the league, at the top of the meeting. That kind of set the tone for the conversation. And then Clark is quoted saying, there are so many more conversations that have to happen before a strike can even be called. After the meeting today, it's still on the table. So both, you know, the players making it clear a strike is potentially on the table. Also, I know that Sid Colson was on her podcast talking and just kind of reminding people that they have to stay united, you know, together, the players. And so they, in my opinion, they still seem to be united, but there have been some reports that there could be dissension among the ranks, or everyone not seeing eye to eye. So what are you making of all the various reporting that is coming out, Terrika?
Yeah, I think this is incredibly interesting. I recently was given some information from a source close to the situation on background that the meeting on Monday was never supposed to be a meeting in which the WNBA was supposed to present a proposal, that it was a meeting that was supposed to begin a face level conversation. So I think that that's interesting. If that's the stance coming from someone close to the league, if that's what they believe the meeting was, I'd be interested in knowing where this communication breakdown happened as to why were the players expecting there to be some type of proposal presented if the league believes the conversation was just supposed to be just that, a conversation. So that is interesting. And I've also heard the reports that there is dissension among the players union, but what hasn't been clear is if that dissension is among the players or if that dissension is among those in the union representing the players, right? So there has been some conversation on where that stands. I think all of this is interesting, right? And honestly, none of this is surprising. Like, you expect there to be rumblings and moanings to try to shake up one side to give another side more leverage than the other. So none of that actually surprises me. But I did read an article by Doug Feinberg, excuse me, from the Associated Press, who spoke with Nneka Ogwumike. And that article made me feel that Nneka was just very, adamant to what Breanna Stewart is saying, that they want to play. They do not want to have a season in which they are needing to sit out or in needing to lock out or anything like that. And that also leads me to think, hey, listen, there's only so much information that we're going to hear about a strike or a lockout anyway, because whatever information comes out, understanding the other side can use that information against them. So if the league knows that the players want to call a strike, how do we know that the owners can't say, well, before you call a strike, we will lock up the facilities and we will, like, these are things that they can do to each other if it ever gets there. And none of them are hoping that it gets there. But I do think that there are some interesting things that did come out of the proposal that was eventually presented a few days after that conversation. One of the things that stuck out to me was the housing stipend that was placed in there. There were not in previous CBA's provisions for housing. That was something that teams literally were doing and giving for the players. And so that was interesting to me. I had no idea that the players did not already have league pass. Like, that's what we
and free complimentary tickets to the All-Star game.
And I was like, that's what we doing. That's what we giving away. Oh, okay. So, and then again, just certain things like, having a family room when people come to see you and to have you play, which I thought again was interesting because that isn't something that is set by the league, but I know that there are teams that offer those things already. So maybe formalizing it, but at the end of the day, Nat, you and I both know that the major thing that these two entities are still very much locked in on is the idea of what percentage comes from revenue sharing. And they still have not figured out how they can come together to solve whether that revenue sharing should come as gross revenue or as net revenue. And that is the issue. Like, no matter what else you put out there, no matter what else you bring and put on the table, if the conversation isn't about this net revenue sharing over gross revenue sharing and the percentage that these players are going to receive from that, I don't know how much longer they can continue to keep up this kind of charade of we want to play, or we don't want to lock out the players. But like, at some point, someone has got to give in. And the league has to understand, at least they should understand, that if I'm talking about paying out expenses, how are playing players who are literally providing the product on the court not considered as part of an expense that's necessary for whatever it is that you're trying to do? So that is really what it boils down to. If they cannot come to an agreement on whether or not this revenue sharing can be solved, then I don't know how we see a season start May 8th.
Yeah. Reporting by Sports Business Journal is that on the latest proposal, because the WNBA did come back with a proposal late Friday evening. Well, maybe it wasn't late, but on Friday night, that the revenue share split was not beyond 15%.
Yeah.
And the PA previously asked for 30%. So,
and if I'm not mistaken, that was 15%, which would equal off of gross, right? 70% of net, which is 15% of gross, right? Yep.
Yeah. And so, wait, are you saying gross or net? Because I believe.
So it's, if I'm not mistaken, at least I believed in the article, because I think I read that one too. It was 15% of gross revenue, which would equal 70% of net revenue. So essentially, it's less than 15% of the gross when the players are asking for 30%. And they currently have 9.3% right now. So it's one of those ridiculous, it's an increase, but come on,
it's nominal at best.
Not modest.
So, that's what they came back with. It's almost like, I don't know, in some ways it almost feels like the league is daring them to strike, because if you come back with a proposal that makes no kind of like movement on the key issue, and I do understand the league's perspective, because they feel like, well, they came back and they addressed some of the other concerns, like you brought up. There was like a whole checklist here, and I'm looking at like, they have like 37 improvements, and so yeah, a lot of people did get a kick out of the whole league pass thing, and they were making fun, but there were some real things in there, related to team charter travel and pregnant player trade consent. There was a lot in there, and other things that really do matter to the players. And so from the league's perspective, they're probably feeling like, well, we came back and we gave you some things, other asks that you say are important to you. And so, but as you stated, we do all know that the revenue share is the big thing. And so, and there was really not much movement there. Also, according to reporting from SBJ, there's a sense that a WNBA player picket line could be the next move, potentially at NBA All-Star weekend or at the game in Los Angeles. And, I find it interesting that the Players Union recently posted on their Instagram account video discussing when the NBA players protested and did a strike at the NBA game, at NBA All-Star. So is that a coincidence? I don't know, but just trying to read the context clues and follow the reporting as everyone else is. So, if it gets there, it would be really fascinating and something this league hasn't seen, and but also not something that would surprise us, because we know these women will stand up and fight for what they believe in. We had a whole discussion about them doing that and being activists, and they will stand up for what they believe is right. And so time will tell. We will see. But as this story continues to develop, and as everyone has said, the closer you get to when that starting date is supposed to be and no agreements reach, it just, I don't know. I'm not saying that there will be no season, but it just seems unlikely for the start date that they're planning. But it also, to me, increases the likelihood of some kind of potential work stoppage, Terrika.
Right. And on top of that, there is I don't want to say a deadline, but I think there is an expectation of this back and forth negotiation over the next couple of weeks as it relates to the proposal that was presented. So that's going to be interesting to see if that happens. But there are so many things that still need to happen between now and the time that a season starts. There still needs to be an expansion draft for Toronto and Portland. There still needs to be free agency. There still needs to be free agency. You still got to set the date and time for the actual rookie class draft that is supposed to happen that typically happens a week after the Final Four. And this year is not like any other year, because this year is a year in which FIBA play is happening. So the league is already expecting to take a couple of weeks off during the season, because those players will be needing to play in the FIBA competition. So pushing a season back not only implicates the things that have to happen before the season, but could also affect the scheduling in the season with international play that was already going to be condensed. And I don't know if people remember this, but a couple years ago when they had FIBA play and they had the year after, because the Olympics were pushed back due to COVID-19, they really had to condense a lot of those games. And the players spoke out heavily about how the season felt with those games having to be so close, so many back-to-backs. So many people felt like their bodies were pushed to a different limit because of how the schedule was so condensed. And it feels like this was something that people were trying to avoid. So if they really want to avoid that, they need to figure out how to get the CBA done. quickly.
Absolutely. Well, we will be, of course, monitoring and watching and seeing what happens. Just fascinating stuff here. But thank you guys so much for tuning in with us for the WNBA on NBC. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on this CBA coverage.